Oh wow, not a way to put that pressure on both of us. So hi everybody. Me and Chris here. I don't know if you can see him right now. Um, we're two people working on bot detection for Wikimedia Foundation, and also we are hosting an esteemed actor to work with us today. And we're here to talk to you about the phenomenon of residential proxies. So first of all, I need to make a disclaimer. While we are going to talk about things that derive from our experience working on bot detection in our professional capacity at Wikimedia Foundation, the views we express here are our own and do not necessarily reflect the views of our employer. Because also, I would say this talk's goal is to lower your trust in mankind, which is not exactly the mission of our employer. So maybe the first thing to explain is why we are working on bot detection. After all, our content is free for everyone to reuse, right? And we technically welcome people to use it in creative ways, to the point that we publish complete dumps of our content. The answer is that, as I usually say, our content is free, but our infrastructure is not. And we noticed over the last 2.5 years worrisome trend, which I think we're not alone in noticing, because I don't remember MudCon having multiple sessions about scrapers and defending from crawlers in the past. Um, what happened recently in the tech world that made this so important to everyone? Well, if you guessed the AI gold rush, you guessed right. LLMs need as much as your human created data to train on as they can. And there's a gold rush going on. Will it kill the open internet? Don't worry, the free market will regulate by itself while robotic parrots will phagocytate your work. But hey, it's all worth it. Trust me. Uh, what are the disruption of the internet, the pollution, the unthinkable energy and water consumption, the hardware shortages when it's a matter of increasing shareholder value? And also, to be very honest, without generative LLMs and diffusion models, I wouldn't be able to add a very sad image of a parrot eating your brain to this slide. It's so worth it, you see it. But so, why is this scraping a problem? Why is this a problem? And like Googlebot or Yandex or Bingbot weren't a problem in the past. Well, it's a problem because given this is a gold rush, who moves faster and with more disrespect of any rule wins. So every possible rule of responsible scraping goes out of the window. Who cares about robots.txt, right? Rules just don't get blocked and don't get sued. So given these are the rules that they abide by, how do somebody can scrape a wiki or basically the internet, whole internet, without leaving a trail back to their owner? And well, let me first take you back to a more innocent time, let's say around 2019, right? If you wanted to scrape a website without leaving a trail back to you, well, you had to rent a botnet, basically, which is a network of compromised devices. It meant going to the dark web, learning how to go to the dark web, go to some questionable forum. Probably you also needed to learn Russian, and you would have to fiddle with cryptocurrencies and hope that people selling you access to these botnets weren't scamming you. All of this was completely illegal, and in many situations could carry legal consequences back to you. But thankfully, the free market economy solves these kinds of problems. This was clearly an industry ripe for disruption, and I'll leave Chris to continue now.
Yeah, like Joe said, clearly, with all of the demand from the greater tech industry and all of the big infusion of cash and credit this year, modern data problems require modern data solutions, and the market has provided. There's now a wide variety of services that will sell in the open, access to just the home connections of millions of people or their mobile phones or wherever else that they found devices that could be compromised. The pricing plans are all pretty reasonable. $2 a gigabyte is not that bad from where I'm sitting. That's a lot of data, right? There's free trials. There's next slide, please, Joe. There's reviews on Trustpilot and other places. They have chatbots that can help you get up to speed on not just how to use their systems, but also, best practices and stuff for not getting caught. Next slide, please. And they all claim to give you access to millions, if not hundreds of millions, of IP addresses worldwide. And they all promise transparency, and many of them also promise that these are ethically sourced IP addresses. You can pay by a credit card or crypto. You're probably wondering how they do a bunch of the sourcing of this stuff. Some companies are saying that we do know your customer, we know where our proxies are coming from, but at the same time, there's Android game publishers that exist basically just to put residential proxy code in their apps, usually without telling the user in any meaningful way. That's not all. Next slide, please. You can also just buy them. You can go to Best Buy or Walmart or their websites and just buy a pirate TV box that has either a vulnerable Android version or has the reciprocity code already inside of it. And it recently came to light a few months ago that that some networks, not only were they allowing anywhere on the internet, they are also allowing private network space, which opened up a whole new frontier of compromisable devices. Next slide, please. Things like smart plugs, which are just downloading 90 gigabytes in the past month from this one user's screenshot on Reddit. Next slide, please. The number of IPs are simply mind-blowing. Sometimes up to 200 million different IP addresses in a month. I think there might be some overcounting there because of V6, but still, it's mind-boggling. Next slide, please. NetNut, one of the largest here, although it is complicated to say because a lot of these providers are subletting proxies to each other and sharing resources. But NetNut boasts to have almost 90 million different IPs at their disposal. Next slide, please. And with happy customers, too, who were apparently fine just putting their name up on NetNut's site. Next slide, please. Now, that was actually a peek into where things were late last year. And, now we're more than a third of the way through this year, and things have progressed rapidly, actually. Next slide, please. This industry is in hyper-growth phase right now. It's vibrant. There's so much innovation happening. There's advertising happening. Joe and I got those on Reddit ourselves. There's also case studies coming out about how residential proxies are the new great source of revenue for anyone developing an app. Next slide, please. And of course, there's a great synergy here between reciproxies and the AI industry. Not just that in all that data is needed, but next slide, please. Why not make it easy to have agentic intelligence scrape websites for you? Why would you have to write code when you can have Claude vibe code you a scraper and use a model content protocol server that's provided for you? Next slide, please. Oh, and you don't even need to pay if you make a small number of requests. So, that's great. That's so user-friendly. Next slide, please. So, of course, back to Joe.
Okay, so how do you defend yourself in front of this, right? You're all site operators. Most of you are site operators here. And these things make scraper appears from people's own computers and or mobile phones, from networks of hundreds of thousands of IP at their disposal. How do you defend? How do we defend our sites without throwing away the baby with the bathwater, right? And basically, the thing that we are here to tell you is that IP-based blocks, which were central to MediaWiki, by the way, ironically, for so long, are a thing of the past. You can't really block traffic based on IPs without risking blocking a large part of your user base. And let us show you, there's a nice visualization that Chris has created, actually. Here you see, this is basically the whole IPv4 space. Every little square represents a small subnet, and the ones that are in blue or green or red are the percentage of reciproxies contained into one of these blocks. Now, from our observations, about 10% or all the internet traffic that we see is coming from addresses that also host a residential proxy. So what can you do? First of all, I think you need to come to terms with the fact that there is no real silver bullet, and there no signal that you can use is a good signal by itself. Unless you're willing to rely on tools created by CDN companies, I don't know, like Cloudflare, StanStyle, or stuff like that, at the expense of the privacy of your users, which is, I mean, a reasonable compromise, to be very clear, especially if you don't have the resources that we have to spend on this stuff. You will have to combine multiple signals, some of which are listed here. I don't think there's much of a point of getting too much deep in these, but like taking the fingerprints of requests, there are browser protocol fingerprinting techniques. You could do even very simple JavaScript challenges to exclude a lot of bots that just don't run JavaScript. You could buy or help your reputation databases, but I put an asterisk here because they need to be used with caution. As I just said, they cover a lot of the space. And there's more refined things that you can do, like creating honeypot links, like links that a normal user would never follow, but these bots would follow, that allow you to find them. I mean, there's a lot of these things you can do, but I'm sure the roundtable Jeremy is running after this presentation will cover some of these. But I think it's time to wrap this talk up, because I promised Cindy that we will stay within 15 minutes. And I feel that all that we said up to now really made you sad. And we want to leave you, we don't want to leave our audience sad. So I'll close with this overview on a merrier note. You can be part of this revolution. NetNut's parent company, who's called Alarum, is quoted on NASDAQ, and you can buy their stocks. Actually, here is a slide from their investors prospect. Yes, we went to look at their investors prospects for you, so you didn't have to do it. And as you can see, they have a booming revenue driven by AI data collection, like they explicitly say it. And looking at their fundamentals, our totally not financial advice, rating is strong buy. Okay, I think that's all from us, folks. I guess you might have some questions. We might be able to respond to some of them, answer to some of them, not the ones about mankind in general, though, I think.
Wonderful, thank you. Awesome. I'm quite sure we have questions in the room.
Hi, so great talk, both in substance and style. Can you talk any more about timing-based detections of residential proxies? Because my impression is that if you have access to like the network level TLS, like TCP packets, there is a pretty good strategy there. And most of what I'm doing, for example, doesn't have access to that. I'm curious if you guys are using that operationally. If you are, if you can talk about it. If not, you know.
Great question. We aren't using that operationally yet. It's something that we've been considering. And yeah, it's hard to do technically. There's some information that you can get from the Linux kernel with a syscall, and there's some stuff that you can pull out basically only using XDP, if you know what that is,
yeah.
Since you have to add some extra stuff into the code path itself. If we move forward with that operationally, we will probably have some code available, although no promises on how easy it is to integrate into your own environment, right? Like, we only have time to build stuff for our CDN and not necessarily, you know, convert it into a thriving open source project.
That makes sense. I mean, I think
that makes sense.
The way I look at this is we're all kind of trying to solve the same problem from slightly different angles, and it's not necessarily someone needs to build a tool for everyone. It's more the strategy. Like, what I would want to know is, does the strategy actually work, and can I figure that out with me going and spending like 1,000 hours building my own thing for that,
right.
regardless of whether it's the exact same infrastructure. What's the best way to stay in contact with I guess you guys about this? What's the way to build kind of a coalition, I guess, to try and fight this?
That's a great question, and it's something that that at least I personally would like to see happen. There are complications with just sharing a lot of. Basically, it's something that we're already talking to our legal department about the possibility of, but there's a lot of things to resolve there to make it anything formal or official. But you are welcome to talk to us. Just send us email or hit us up on Wikimedia IRC.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, just adding a detail. I think that we want to make at least the software that we wrote a bit less adversarial to install for somebody that's not running our stack, our complete stack. So that's an effort that we're going to do actually probably in the next quarter to make it slightly easier to use, because we've been hit like from small and large organizations that are asking us what we're doing, right? Because basically everybody that has the same problem that we have, which is basically we can't just pay Cloudflare to do it for us. Because by the way, the freemium protection from Cloudflare, so what we get without paying for good protection isn't very good. I think actually, I suppose Jeremy is going to talk about this in a few minutes. But there are solutions with Cloudflare or other, even Fastly, for example. We have solutions that you can pay for, of course, at the cost of having a CDN terminate your TLS connection. So basically giving them access to everything that your users are doing with you. But we've seen other organizations hitting up on us and asking how we're doing things. And an example could be, I think we can share, OpenStreetMap they're also struggling. They also posted on LinkedIn in the past and on Mastodon about it. So I think we can say it. But we've heard also from other organizations, both in the free knowledge space and outside of it. So we are trying to work in the direction of being able to share. The thing that's really interesting to share, that is more than the software that we're writing, is the techniques that we're using. But those need to stay reserved, of course, for obvious reasons. Like if callers can see what you're doing and not just reverse engineer it, they're just going to work around it. It's just that simple. One thing to remember is that if your goal is to reduce load, that's doable. If your goal is to completely block crawling, that's extremely more complex. And we don't have a solution for that. We've built everything in the direction of just making the load bearable, because that's what we want, right? We want to share our data, actually. We just don't want these things to completely overwhelm our resources instead of leaving our resources prioritize humans, basically.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is Jeffrey. I have a few questions, but first, thank you so much for sharing. I think this was by far the most talk that we were most excited about talking with other attendees here. So we really appreciate you sharing this. This is unfortunately negatively impacting so many of us. I have two questions. So the first is, there are many layers that we can, put our defenses on. We could do it at the MediaWiki, code level, but perhaps more effectively, we may also need to put stuff at lower levels, like on the network level. So what, without giving maybe too much away to the point where it would compromise your security, do you have any kind of ethos or inclination towards where you want to build that protection, what layer you want to build it on?
I mean, yeah, sure. There's the first answer is in our CDN, right? We control that whole stack. In practice for other people, like if you're, well, actually, I don't know what's typical for running MediaWiki in the real world, but like, if you have something like Nginx or HA proxy in front of it, that's a good place to add mitigations like this, or at least to add some detection and like, logging, basically, right? Like if you're doing protocol fingerprint kind of stuff, then you can probably already find code out there for your reverse proxy of choice. and that also gives you access to things that you might not have otherwise, like, information about the client's TLS hello, right? Like, that's probably not making it all the way back to your MediaWiki, kind of regardless of how it's set up, right? Now, there are cases where we do need to add rate limiting or other kinds of protections at the application layer, but that's often with a different reverse proxy in front of it anyway, or something tantamount to that. The first line is always going to be at your edge, right? Like, since you might want to make decisions just like, I'm ignoring all traffic from this IP matching this fingerprint for the next 10 minutes or something like that. And it's much better to do that in your proxy than in MediaWiki. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very helpful. So I'm hearing is, we want to prioritize that proxy first, and then, sometimes we have to actually go to the application level, but that's more of a last resort, I guess. The second question is, I know last year Giuseppe made a very good point of this, that he was very opposed to Anubis contributing to global warming, which for those of you in the United States, I believe is real, so please don't attack me for that. Anyway, fingerprinting is becoming more of a thing, and unfortunately, these proof of work algorithms they sometimes are still more effective, although they're becoming less effective. But what techniques are you more comfortable with using that don't involve things that contribute to global warming like Anubis does?
I can share a bit. Chris, please integrate if you think. And so, for example, if you think of these fingerprints, right? A typical suite is J4A, right? You can. So one thing that I wanted to say, maybe in addition to what Chris has said, is that you need to build somehow a knowledge base of behavior of normal clients and compare the behavior of any client that comes in with what you expect is the behavior of a normal client. And these fingerprints are a good marker of this behavior. So in a way, think of, and for using a term that's overused in the tech industry that will make a lot of you cringe, if you build some level of knowledge of this stuff into your data lake, right? So in your analytics platform, that will probably help you in rooting out scraping campaigns, at least in a reactionary way, right? So you see the load going up, you can probably go and look at your access logs, right, where you have put them in a column in an OLAP database, right, something like that. And if your logs contain information about these fingerprints, you're probably going to be able to characterize the traffic that you're getting. There's also things that you can do, like looking at the geographic provenance of your traffic, right, and seeing, for example, if what you see in the headers that you get correspond to what you would expect from that area or what the browser declares to be. Jeremy, if you remember, last year I was advocating just local versions of Firefox and Chrome, right? That's still amazingly kind of a thing. It's not as prevalent as it was last year. Like last year, it was like 70% of scrolling traffic. So there's also that, but there's also things that don't, like something that says to be, I'm Chrome, but then as the fingerprints of Python requests, right? Stuff like that. And this is stuff that I think everybody can basically do. I would really love to be able to publish data sets with this kind of stuff. Sadly, the moment that you do that, the people that are crawling will know and use it as well. So it's hard to do. Like, that's the problem, right? Building an open source knowledge base about this stuff is extremely complex to do. And I think I can speak for everybody working at the Wikimedia Foundation. We are aching that we can't. Like, actually, I think that some of this stuff is the first few things that we have in our infrastructure that you can't just download and reproduce from scratch. And it's very sad, but it's the reality we live in 2026, right?
Yep. Thank you so much for answering my questions. Does anyone else have any?
Okay, hold on.
Hi, thanks guys, and thanks for the stock tip. There's I guess, an ongoing project at the Wikimedia Foundation called Edge Uniques, which is planning to use cookies to help with this sort of thing. Can you give any updates on its status? If it's still if it's still an ongoing project?
It's definitely still an ongoing project. I mean, the cookie itself shipped late last year. I think it's been on for a while. And we looked at it as a bot detection signal, and it's not clear cut, right? Because so in the interest of privacy, we don't ever take the unique ID out of just being in memory at the edge at the time of the request. We do send some stats back to our data lake in terms of like how many weeks old was this? Did they visit the site 1 week out of the past 10 or 10 weeks out of the past 10, things like that, right? Where it's just very rough buckets to get some idea of the overall distribution shape. And it's only kind of useful for bot detection because there's also just like fully scripted browsers or, things that are keeping a cookie jar out there that are doing crawling or, doing other sorts of scraping activity, right? And this kind of goes back to what Joe was saying, that no single signal is a good signal. You need a synthesis of things and the ability to, notice distinctive patterns and combinations of features, basically. Does that get to some of your question, or is there?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks.
I can add one detail which is important for us, which is one of the reasons why this cookie is important to the work that we are doing is actually that it allows us to rate limit people, like sessions based on the client. So when, for example, there's ISPs like my ISP in Italy that do carrier grade NATs, which means that they hide multiple users behind the same IP. And if we did rate limiting just by IP, we would put you and also the Resi proxy on your mobile phone or your mobile phone of your partner in the same bucket. Instead, we affect that if you have a cookie jar and you keep this unique cookie, then we do the rate limiting counting on this unique cookie. And that allows us not to rate limit you while we're rate limiting the AI company that's following their scraping through your home connection.
It's a new question. Thanks, guys, for the talk. It does kind of sound like we're in a disappointing state of affairs where everybody's facing this, and ideally we could share information with the people that are trying to host information, and I know security through obscurity is usually a bad form of security, but it sounds like right now with how dynamic everything is, sharing good strategies maybe not the best plan. There is a page on MediaWiki called Handling Web Crawlers that has some information, but is there this is a follow-up to Jonathan's question, but what's the best way for us to work together to provide some protection?
So let me answer first, and then I'll let you answer more, Chris. Just on the security through obscurity part, I 100% subscribe the idea that security through obscurity is a terrible idea. This is not security through obscurity. This is defense through obscurity, which kind of works on the other hand, specifically because things are continually changing. Like, even if we shared the techniques that we were using 3 months ago, those are different from the ones that we're using now. Like, the things have evolved quite a bit. We hope that we could get to a point where we can share some of this information through legal, like basically we would have to ask people to sign some form of NDAs, right? So that they don't divulge what they get from us, and or we can do an exchange sharing, information sharing system, right? Where we can provide, for example, fingerprints that we've seen we observed being bad, and we could get it back from the other site operator, something like that. We've been thinking about this I think we will eventually get to something. It's legal territory, so everything moves significantly slower than it does in technology. So I will make no promises. Chris, if you want to answer more on the substance.
Yeah. No, I think that's great, Joe. I kind of two small things to add. One is that like this issue is getting more attention overall, just in the world. And so are other things that touch on it very directly, right? Like there were two different big kind of botnet busts this year by law enforcement, and they definitely care about this problem too because it complicates their lives tremendously. So I'm hoping that things move in a more reasonable direction in the larger world, overall, at least some. And the other thing is that our synthesis of the techniques and the data that we gathered from them and the insights that we have from them aren't public, but a lot of the algorithms and the protocol things that we're doing are already open source. You know, they're maybe only published in our Puppet repo or something, but the beginnings of it is all stuff that was, I mean, like, you know, the JA3 and JA4 protocol fingerprinting suites have been in public work under an open license for some years now, right? We played catch up and put them on our infrastructure last year, right? So yeah, there's starting points that are shareable for sure.
All right. I wanted to just mention that as far as information sharing and talking, there are a couple of people that are in the room here and part of this community that are going to be at the hackathon. So maybe that's another opportunity for people to talk. I also have a question coming sort of at a different angle from this, which is, you know, the whole residential proxy presentation you did was humorous, but also slightly terrifying. And I'm wondering how we can prevent becoming part of the problem. You know, now I haven't purchased a lot of those or any of those devices. I tried to be really careful about the software I put in my network. But how do I know if I'm part of the problem, and how do I prevent being so, other than obviously not buying pirate software, you know, pirate devices?
Yeah. Great question. And so one thing is, don't feel bad if you are, because the landscape of the world in this way is so hostile right now that, like, you know, it could have been like you invited a friend over and they used your Wi-Fi and their compromised device compromised one of yours that wasn't otherwise internet facing, right? Like there's a lot of times that has happened, right? And it's the system that is crazy. But all that being said, one thing is if your home router can do any kind of you know, traffic tracking either per client device or per, you know, destination host or something. Most of these services, they, like, you know, make an API call like back to their own sites or to something obviously associated with them. And if you're doing any substantial crawling, you'll be using a lot of data, right? And in both directions, right? Like you'll see a smart plug or a TV bot or a picture frame or whatever where it downloaded and uploaded gigabytes, right? There's also there's a few IP reputation providers out there that are doing security research to like categorize this and to, like, you know, to show to provide databases of addresses where they've seen bad traffic come from. And you can, for instance, go to spur.us and do a context lookup for your own IP right now without having to log in or anything. And that will tell you if they've seen activity in the last day from where you're connecting from, basically. And there's a few other similar services out there, but I haven't used the other ones.
Yeah, but the URL for Spur is spur.us/context/me, and it will take you, like, I remember it by memory because I check it almost daily. Because I also don't trust my network, to be very honest, at this point.
One more quick question. Do you guys have a bot versus real human threshold that's above 0? Like, you're trying to, is there some acceptance for blocking real humans accidentally? And
No, we try very hard to not do that. We have done it a few times, either by accident or by a rate limit that we thought would be reasonable and actually wasn't for often for power editors that are using macros and stuff. But we at Wikimedia have really tried to err on the side of, like we would rather accept some crawler traffic rather than stop a real human from accessing something.
Yeah, when we don't accidentally block the fingerprint from Google Chrome from accessing the sites, which
it's been like 3 months since that happened.
Nice. All right. That was amazing. I don't think, do we have any more questions in the room? In a second, we're going to move on to Jeffrey's crawler protection roundtable, but I wanted to invite you guys to, if you wanted to stay, we can leave you up on the screen behind it, because his presentation is going to include a roundtable discussion, and I don't know if you'd like to participate in it. You're more than welcome to stay. Cool. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation and the conversation. It was great.